Welcome to the Expert Edge. This is the show where we bring on experts in their fields of health and wellness practice, and we hear their stories and learn what they see working in the field of diabetes reversal and prevention. And I'm happy to introduce today's guest, Vicki Griffin. Welcome, Vicki.
Thank you.
Vicki Griffin, for those of you that have not met her, has a Master's of Science in Human Nutrition, and she served for 22 years as Director of Health Ministries for the Michigan Conference of Seventh-day Adventists and the Director of Lifestyle Matters. During this time, she was the creator and editor of the 12-topic series Balance Magazine. She also created the Lifestyle Matters Health Seminar Series, a series that I have used over and over in my own health education work in a number of communities around the country. She also developed the 26-topic Balanced Living Tract and PowerPoint series, all of which are amazing materials to help us take charge of our health. So she also has written books like Simple Solutions, Lifestyle Links to Better Health, Foods for Thought, Nutrition's Link with Mood, Memory, Learning, and Behavior. And she's the author of the Guilt-Free Gourmet Cookbook, my all-time favorite cookbook, I will have you know, which features easy, fast, economical, and nutritious plant-based recipes. Her special area of interest and research is the relationship between diet, lifestyle, stress mechanisms, and brain health. So she has presented in training seminars worldwide, and I will also be sharing a link to some of the resources that she has created if you want more access to that. So most recently, she's been doing patient wellness consults and coaching for the Oak Dent Smiles Dental Clinic in Southfield, Michigan. So she has a really broad basis of experience, and we're going to be diving into something really important here that we haven't talked about on this series before, and that's kind of that link between the health of your mouth and the health of your metabolism. But before we dive into that, I want to ask you, Vicki, how is it that you got started with your interest of this intersection of lifestyle and health?
Thank you, Lucia. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I really appreciate it. And the driving force in all of this was not just intellectual interest. As you were sharing, I was thinking about how we can be so buried in bad news, and whether we've inherited a bad genetic deck, one we didn't ask for, we were born into an environment that would not have been our choice, and we've made choices that have really hurt ourselves, whether by choice, chance, or circumstance. We are made to make it. And I am very thankful at the personal level that, having come from a very violent background, started running away from home at 5 years of really harrowing choices and being a runaway, I'm very, very thankful that God can weaponize our worst weaknesses and make them our strengths. That's the basis of what I do. And I am really thankful for the backup systems that are built into our brain body systems to renew, restore, and recover what has been lost.
And, you know, as you got started working in health education in different communities, was your cookbook your first project, or were there some things that came before that?
No, the first project, although wellness and practical aids are really the heartbeat of daily living, and that's something we don't zero in on enough sometimes. It's like Jackie Gleason said. He said the second day of a diet is always the best because by then you're done with it. So for long-term success, we need to make long-term daily choices and develop the mental metal to tunnel through trouble. So my first book was actually on the relationship between diet, stress, and brain health. The second one was on food and mood, and the third one on addictions, living free. And so really, we're just trying to medicate ourselves through this topsy-turvy world. And there have to be lifestyle keys for improving our ability to navigate through life. And that has been my life interest.
I love that. And it's it's really impacted so many people in helping them to realize the power of choice and that they actually have control over these aspects of their life. But today, let's dive into the connection between oral health and our blood sugars. Like, I don't think we often think about those two things in the same sentence. So tell me, how did you come to start seeing this connection, and share with us some of your experiences along the way?
Thank you so much, Lucia. I had the amazing opportunity post-retirement to work in a dental office for a year before that practice sold. And I was a lifestyle coordinator. I did lifestyle consults with patients. And I was astonished to learn the link between oral health and metabolic conditions such as diabetes, and obesity, and some of these other conditions, even affecting pain syndromes, arthritis, et cetera. So what I learned during this time is that not only do these metabolic inflammatory conditions affect oral health, but oral health affects systemic health and can actually drive these conditions. It was an astonishing discovery to me, one that I had not studied, or if I did at school, it was a paragraph. And so it was astonishing and wonderful to discover that link and to work with patients with oral health care and helping them to understand the link between periodontal disease and things like pancreatic cancer, diabetes, obesity, elevated blood pressure, and multiple systemic conditions.
That's really fascinating that you started seeing these connections between oral health, diabetes, obesity. What is the physiological connection there? Why does one impact the other so directly?
Well, all of these body systems are interrelated and connected. And when we think about it, the mouth is a portal for entry into the system. And so the mouth is filled with flora or bacteria. And when we have poorly controlled blood sugar, for instance, in the case of diabetes, the mouth becomes prone to become invaded with pathogenic bacteria. And that bacteria begins to create a process of buildup of what is called plaque. And plaque is a gummy biofilm that over time becomes what is called calculus, or it's harder, it's more difficult to remove. That process leads to what is called periodontal disease. So you have receding gums, swelling, gum bleeding, deterioration of bone, so that the anchor points to hold your teeth in place begin to deteriorate. Poor oral hygiene is, of course, a factor. We're seeing this in children.
Wow.
And so we see this process of not just cavities. And so you don't want a dentist that just does drill, fill, and bill. We need dentists that educate us as to this process of gum disease, which actually becomes a portal for bacterial and systemic infection in the heart and in the system, and cellular pro-oxidative stress, which increases inflammation and disease. And it can contribute to poor blood sugar control, heart disease, heart attack. It's a highway that is bi-directional. So the condition of our metabolic system, our body system, affects oral health. Our oral health affects, exacerbates, inflames, and even contributes to these metabolic conditions. So the good news is when you begin to address one, it helps to dial down the problems in the other. That's the good news in the story.
Well, I love that. And you were sharing with me the story of how you had an experience with a patient that had diabetes and also some oral issues. And what did you see in that particular case?
I was astonished. This was a friend of mine, a younger woman in her 40s who had suffered from terrible oral health conditions. Her teeth were all loose. She needed a full mouth extraction of her teeth and to be fitted with dentures. She also had poor health habits. She was inactive. She was obese and diabetic and had high blood pressure. So she came to us and all of her teeth were extracted because they were all loose and they were rotten from poor
Wow.
oral hygiene and from her metabolic condition. During this 6-week healing period, her dentures were made. This process of lowering the inflammation in her mouth, astonishingly, she was able to get off numerous medications. And her lifestyle had not changed that much, but she got off at least 3 of her diabetes and blood pressure medications as a result of just lowering inflammation in the mouth. And of course, we gave her a beautiful new smile, and with some lifestyle coaching, a beautiful new outlook on life. And I have seen this more than one time. Absolutely. Another gentleman in his 40s, he had had a near fatal heart attack already. He was obese, a very depressed man, because remember, there's a link between these conditions and food and mood, memory, learning, behavior, depression risk, anxiety, sleeplessness, and all of these things contribute to inflammation. Well, we had that talk. He had his teeth extracted because they lost their anchoring in the bone. He had advanced periodontal disease. And I had to sit and discuss with him ways to eat healthfully, or to have the healthy shakes at least during the 6-week healing period. But this man's life was turned around. So just because we have these problems doesn't mean there isn't hope. God wants us to have hope in our habits, hope in our hindrances, hope in our heartaches, and hope for heaven. So recovery, restoration, renewal is possible. Otherwise, I would say, let's just give it up and go to the pizza parlor. But we don't have to do that. There's a lot of hope and healing when we start paying attention. And that includes good oral hygiene, daily brushing, flossing. If you have crowns and caps and artificial components in the mouth, water picking is especially important, because bacteria is attracted to these substances that are not natural to the mouth. And so daily oral hygiene, so important. And by the way, constantly eating, snacking all day, especially these gummy candies, destroys the mouth, destroys oral health. That's really a bad idea.
Well, that's really interesting, because I know some people whose doctors have told them that they should like eat and snack to maintain, level blood sugars. And yet you're telling me that that is not a good idea because of its effect on our oral health, and our oral health and inflammation in the mouth really affects inflammation throughout our body.
We're not designed to eat all day long. And it's not just what we eat, but how we eat. So eating all day long is disruptive to healthy digestive processes. And I have a presentation that I do called Your Fabulous Forgotten Friend, Fiber. So when you have a good fiber-rich meal that is loaded with antioxidants and the right ratios of nutrients, you are going to be sated. The fiber in the food and the complex of nutrients and antioxidants actually are going to delay and slow blood sugar spikes, which is amazing. And when those fiber components reach the colon, which is the feeding ground for your gut bacteria, you're going to inherit or cultivate the type of bacteria that actually lower systemic inflammation. There's a little phrase I use called gangsters in the gut. And when you're eating ultra processed foods, low fiber foods, which actually create hunger and cravings and cause these blood sugar spikes, they're low in fiber. And so it creates an environment for the proliferation of bacteria that not only are anxiogenic and depressogenic and obesogenic, but they also extract 20% more calories from the foods, because your colon is screaming out messages, hey, we're starving here. Let's bring in some bacteria that are going to get more calories out of that food. So it's a losing battle to eat ultra processed foods all day long and think that you're going to lose weight or gain metabolic health. It's fiber. That's why I call the produce department the Department of Defense.
Yes, absolutely. But it's so interesting that what we choose to put in our mouths not only affects our oral health, but it affects the health of our stomach, our intestines, and all of those microbes there. Is there a connection between the microbes in our gut and inflammation?
Oh, absolutely, because the gut has its own immune system. And so when we are eating a pattern of healthy choices, what we eat, how much, and when, you're going to be getting those nutrients in the right ratios. That's a really key piece because nutrition is a three-legged stool. It's not just eat the cheesecake and take a vitamin kind of thing. We've all tried that. It doesn't work. And so when you eat your nutrients in the plant foods that we have been given for total body nourishment, you're going to enhance or increase the absorption of those nutrients. You're going to increase their utilization at the cellular level, and you're
Mm,
going to increase their retention. That has the net effect of lowering systemic inflammation and what is called oxidative stress. So it's absolutely
mhm,
remarkable. I have seen doctors who work in lifestyle, and again, this was astonishing to me. In 6 weeks of a plant-based
mhm,
diet eaten at regular intervals, not eating all day long, much less in the evening, more in the morning, we saw one patient get off 13 medications.
I love that.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. Now, there's no cure-all for everything. It wouldn't be sin if
Mhm,
it didn't hurt innocent people. Bad things happen to people who have good health practices, and amazing
mhm,
things happen to people who don't. But what we want to do is lower risk. And when you
right.
lower risk, it's going to have a net effect of lowering stress, improving mood, and it also helps with this monster we battle with called mid-body fat. And again,
Mm,
this mid-body fat reflects a backup system to save your life from high blood sugar. So what's going on with that is when blood sugar levels are too high, your body is either going to dump them in the urine or it creates a stress reaction. So a stress hormone called cortisol gets released because of the fact that sugar is too high. The liver picks up on this message and starts to release carbons to glom onto those sugar molecules and form what is called triglycerides, and it stores it around the middle. And
mm.
it has been estimated that about 80% of Americans have pretty poor blood sugar control due to inactivity, poor dietary practices, and let's not forget poor sleep habits as well.
Mm.
Very important. And stress, the drill. It's all that stuff.
There's so many things that work together that we need to pay attention to, and it's not just one thing, right?
Right.
As we talked about the cravings and the different families of microbes in our gut, it sounds to me like you're implying there's also some direct, maybe messaging or connection between our gut and our brains. What is that connection, and how does that impact us in a practical way?
Well, the gangsters in the gut are called firmicutes, and they're not necessarily a bad bacteria, but when they're overgrown, then they
Mm,
are what is called anxiogenic and obesogenic and depressogenic, which that doesn't sound like a really happy flight of feeling. And so sugary, processed, ultra-processed foods and low fiber tend to feed those gut microbes. When you have a diet high in fiber and all of these great colorful fruits, vegetables, whole grains, by the way, are amazing. And healthy fats, the nuts, the walnuts, the different, and by the way, nuts as a group are about 65% monounsaturated fat, which is excellent for the brain. Walnuts are high in omega-3s. We need these kinds of foods. And what happens when we eat these good foods from the produce, the whole grains, the beans, it encourages a species, a major category of bacteria called bacteroidetes. And the bacteroidetes actually form this, what is called the substrate or the production. They are broken down by the bacteria. The bacteroidetes are broken down into compounds that actually form serotonin
Hmm.
dopamine, and GABA. GABA, these are neurotransmitters that have a powerful effect on mood. And 80% of serotonin and dopamine are actually formed in the GI tract. And so
Hmm.
when we are healthy in our mind, our mental health, and our thinking, it affects gut health. When we are healthy in our habits, it affects brain health. And GABA is actually associated with impulse control. So these dietary foods are actually mental health medicines.
That's amazing. I just am always blown away by the complex interactions of our different body systems and simple lifestyle choices and the widespread impact that they have in our body. And what I love is that one healthy choice has a lot of healthy impacts on all these systems. It's not like you need to do one thing for this system that's healthy, but a different thing for this other system. It's like it's all the same things, right?
It's really wonderful. Just thinking about greens, the greens and beans so rich in magnesium. Magnesium is utilized in more than 350 metabolic functions. It has to do with energy. People are spiking their foods and having these energy drinks and then downing melatonin at night to try to sleep. There was a gentleman yesterday I was talking with, he said, I'm just exhausted all the time. I drink 4 or 5 cups of coffee in the morning, taking melatonin at night, and he's got that cycle going. But the good
Mm.
news is that there is a difference between stimulation and strength. And when we start giving our bodies the nutrients that they really need, the macro and micronutrients in the right ratios, then these cellular components begin to function better. And when we have a stress reaction, some of those molecules or inflammatory cytokines actually come from cell walls. And so
Mm.
when you have the healthy fats, for instance, the inflammatory response is actually lower. And so the cell, when you have healthy fats, they are more flexible, more permeable, more electric, and more conductive. So
Mm.
these stiff cell walls from a high saturated fat diet, high in animal products and sugar, it causes these what are called glycation end products, and it just stiffens these cells. So that causes blood sugar problems because the insulin, which is the carrier, can't get the glucose into the cells. That's called
Mhm.
insulin resistance. The great news is that when you start shifting away from these animal fats and start shifting into the healthy, more the monounsaturated vegetable omega-3 fats, you're going to create more flexibility with those cell walls, more permeability, begins to lower inflammation. So that is the good
Mm.
news today.
And I love that because inflammation is what really underlines so much of our metabolic disorders, the things that are killing people today in America. And it's not just killing people because their sugars are going up or because their insulin resistance is going up, but it's also affecting our minds.
Right.
And what do we know about inflammation and its effect on our brain?
That's a really great question. Your brain has its own immune system in the glial cells. And so when the body has inflammation, systemic inflammation, it creates a response in the glial cells as well. Glial cells are support and immune cells in the brain. And when we have inflammation in the body, it causes a defense reaction in the brain. And so the brain cells themselves become less permeable and the nutrients become less available to those brain cells. And you start
Mm.
to see what is called atrophy in the brain and increased stress and depression symptoms
Mm.
as well.
And, as you talk about depression, which we've seen so much of that, especially over the last, 4 years, especially more anxiety, more depression, and people are becoming more aware, I believe, of those neurotransmitters that we need to have good production of to feel good. And as we see inflammation really interfering with the production of those neurotransmitters that help us feel good, I think it makes sense to realize that if we want to optimize not only our body's physical function, but our mental function, that inflammation, wherever it is found in our body, needs to be addressed. Does that?
Absolutely. I really appreciate that summary. It's so important. And what we say in our obesity programs is that the battle is not for the bulge, it's for the brain. It's not
Mhm.
about weight control, it's about appetite control. And that's a brain thing. Now think about the typical double, triple burger with cheese and all that stuff and ranch dressing with a great big Coke. What that does is it stimulates peptides in the stomach that increase appetite, that make you
Mm.
hungry. And then the high fat content of that meal dials down receptors in cells that tell you you've had enough. So you're eating a meal that increases appetite and shuts off appetite control. That's
Mm.
what you're dealing with. And the brain is the hardware of the soul. So you've got your hardware and you've got your software, your mind, your thinking, that connection with God, but it's through a hardware system. And
Mhm.
that's the brain.
Yes. And I think we really need to understand this connection if we want to optimize our lives, our health, where where we're going to be 20 years from now, if we're still here on Earth. It's like all of these things really impact our ability to make good choices, our ability to optimize, work through challenges in life, deal with the hard things that are in our lives because nobody's life is completely stress-free or trouble-free. But we
No.
do have to figure out what is the best way we can optimize it, the way we relate to those things and think through problems and find solutions. And it sounds like something like not taking good care of our mouths, not taking good care of our gut biome can all have a direct influence on that. That's pretty powerful.
It certainly does. And I know from personal experience, having been a runaway and all the horrible lifestyle pieces and the drugs and all of that and eating disorders that go
Mhm.
with that kind of lifestyle, I know that you can just wish and want and I needed the power of God to change my heart, to give me victory and power over this thing. And I can pray, and I should, and I can claim promises, and I should. But if I sit down on the couch and watch Desperate Housewives and eat ding dongs, I'm not going to get much traction. So I need
Mhm.
prayer. I need those promises, but I also need a plan. And the plan is that rainbow of promise that God put in the sky. He put it right in the produce department. He put it in those beautiful whole grains. He put it in the nuts and seeds and beans. And by the way, it is actually more economical. A plant-based diet is more economical. You get more bang for your buck than these junk
Mm.
food items that are killing us or make us
Mm.
wish we were dead because we're so depressed.
Right. Yeah. And I think that is something that is important for us to really think about with and be intentional about in our lives, because I really believe that we were designed to live happy, healthy lives. And even in a broken world where many of us have had to deal with hard things, you've mentioned the impact that childhood trauma can have, the impact that negative experiences in our growing up years can have on us, even as adults, that does not make it hopeless, that
No,
there's always hope. And as we make better choices, it can create an upward spiral versus a downward spiral in our lives.
thank you. I'll take it.
And as if you're talking to someone that's just really struggling, like maybe that something, choice A is going to be better for me than choice B, but I really don't feel like doing choice A. It's like, how do we get started in this upward spiral and reverse the downward spiral that life might have thrown us into and we feel like we're caught in?
It all starts in the mind. We've been in hurricane season and we watch these weather systems begin to form and we wonder which way it's going to go. Well, you can have a hurricane hit shore, or you can see that weather system go out to sea and dissipate. So it begins with the way we think. We can be pitiful or powerful. We can be bitter or better. You may have been thrown under the bus, but you can get up and drive that thing. And that's what day by day, step by step, it's called resiliency. And it's really
Mhm.
interesting, Thea, because the opposite of depression is not happiness, joy, and cupcakes. The opposite of depression is the opposite of depression is resiliency. That's the
Mm.
ability to tunnel through trouble till you get to the other side. And then you're getting better, you're getting stronger. You are now going to be used to help somebody else along that way. That's called being
Mm.
on the right team.
I love that. And, we were talking a little bit earlier about so many resources that you've had a hand in creating that can help people to apply some of the principles we've talked about today in very practical ways. And one of those is the website lifestylematters.com. We'll put that in the link. That link will be in the description below this video. But could you tell people a little bit about what they'll find if they go there and give them a little guidance about what might be helpful for them?
Well, there are 26 balanced living tracks. There are little pamphlets that are available on 26 different lifestyle and wellness topics. We have several books. We have scripted PowerPoints, lots of materials that are available, recipes, the cookbook that you talked about. So those are materials that are available that are practical, reasonable, and can help you day by day to build a better brain, better body, and a better life.
That's amazing. And I just really appreciate all of the many years of work and effort you put into developing those materials that I know I have personally used over and over again, working with people that want to improve their health, optimize their health outcomes. And so they're just really full of gems. But as we kind of thinking about wrapping up our time here today, I'd love to hear from you. What would be like your words of wisdom, a final takeaway? If somebody's here, they're struggling with blood sugars, and they're like, what can I do that doesn't seem overwhelming, but will actually move me forward towards a better health? What would you share with them?
Well, when you asked me that question, the first thing I thought of was wandering through the produce department. And there's a little section in one of our books called Three Cheers for Salad, Raw, Raw, Raw. Um, and so finding those healthy berries and just the beautiful fresh foods that are full of antioxidants, learning how to utilize even in the produce department now for people that are alone or just have a couple of you in the house. They have these bags of mixed produce that you can buy with the mixed vegetables, the teriyaki type stir fry foods. And instead of stir frying them in a lot of oil, just lightly steam them. They're great chopped up in salads. You can do a wrap. And so it's instead of having a different recipe every day, you can learn how to use some basic fruits and vegetables and learn to use them 6 or 7 different ways. And
Mhm.
that's the key. Look for fiber. You want about 15 to 15 grams of fiber per meal. Women want to get about 45 grams of fiber a day, men 50 to 55. That's just an average. But the
Mhm.
dietary fiber through these wonderful whole foods, just a handful of walnuts every day is going to cut your risk of a heart attack by 50%. It has 1,200 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids. So
Mhm.
I want you who are listening to this one bite at a time, one choice at a time, and you will have more flavor, more fun, more energy. And our tongues have been attenuated to sweet, salt, fat, but there are thousands of taste receptors on the tongue. So when you start to glide those new foods over your into your mouth and over your tongue, it turns on receptors for more subtle flavors. So when
Mhm.
you first start doing this, it may not taste amazing, but it starts to taste better and better until you're craving the good stuff.
I love that. And wouldn't that be a wonderful situation to be in where you just crave the things that really support your best health, make you feel happy, healthy, and full of energy? So I just want to say thank you so much, Vicki, for being with us here today and sharing from your wealth of wisdom some very practical things that can help us to decrease inflammation, drop our blood sugars, and enjoy better lives. So thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
And remember, everyone, health is wealth, and it comes by choice, not by chance. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today.